Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Glasses. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhan Hari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhan Hari Yashoda Nandana Raja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Raja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, 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 Gora Haribo, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Radha Govinda Deva ki. Grantaraja Srimad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande. Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Om Agyana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttavadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathang Vitang Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good morning, everyone. No? Good morning. I'm happy to be here at Radha Govinda Mandir after 4 years, maybe, from before. Now we have before pandemic, after pandemic, BC, and or BP, I guess. Huh? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswating Vyasa Tato Jayamudiraye Nashta Prayeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. This morning we're reading from Srimad Bhāgavatam, Srimad Bhāgavata Purana, from the third canto, chapter 26, Fundamental Principles of Material Nature, and we are hearing from, who is speaking these verses? Kapila Dev, yes. All right, let's chant the verse. Gunair vichitra srijatim. Gunair vichitra srijatim. Sarupa prakritim praja. Sarupa prakritim praja. Vilokya mumuhe sadya. Vilokya mumuhe sadya. Saiha jnana guhaya. Saiha jnana guhaya. Gunair vichitra srijatim. Sarupa prakritim praja. Vilokya mumuhe sadya. Saiha jnana guhaya. Others. Ksetra Srijatim. Kishori? No? Okay, what's it all mean? Gunai. By the threefold modes, Vichitra, variegated, Sijatim, creating, Sarupa, with forms, Prakritim, material nature, Praja, living entities, Vilokya, having seen, Mumuhe, was illusioned, Sadya, at once, Saha, the living entity, Iha, in this world, Jnana Guhaya, by the knowledge-covering feature. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: divided into varieties by her threefold modes, material nature creates the forms of the living entities. And the living entities, seeing this, are illusioned by the knowledge-covering feature of the illusory energy. Purport: material energy has the power to cover knowledge. But this covering cannot be applied to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is applicable only to the praja, or those who are born with material bodies, the conditioned souls. The different kinds of living entities vary according to the modes of material nature, as explained in Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literature. In Bhagavad Gita 7.12, it is very nicely explained that although the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance are born of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is not subject to them. In other words, the energy emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot act on him. It acts on the conditioned souls who are covered by material energy. The Lord is the Father of all living entities because he impregnates material energy with the conditioned souls. Therefore, the conditioned souls get bodies created by the material energy, whereas the Father of the living entities is aloof from the three modes. It is stated in the previous verse that the material energy was accepted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order that he might exhibit pastimes for the living entities who wanted to enjoy and lord it over the material energy. This world was created through the material energy of the Lord for the so-called enjoyment of such living entities. Why this material world was created for the sufferings of the conditioned souls is a very intricate question, which Srila Prabhupada will discuss. There is a hint in the previous verse in the word Leelaya, which means for the pastimes of the Lord. The Lord wants to rectify the enjoying temperament of the conditioned souls. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that no one is the enjoyer, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When I first heard this as a new bhakta, I felt so relieved that I don't have to try to be the enjoyer. Desperately I was trying to enjoy, it wasn't working, and then I learned, you're never going to do it, it's never going to happen, so don't worry about it. But don't think there's no one enjoying, there is someone enjoying. Who is that? Yes. This material energy is created, therefore, for anyone who pretends to enjoy. Pretends. The idea of pretending to enjoy, does this make you think of anything? Any associations you have of pretending to enjoy? Yes, I'm forgetting your good name. Guy Gorchan, yes.
It makes me think of like children that have like a little setup, like they cook in the kitchen.
Uh-huh.
So it's all fake plastic things, and you don't actually get food.
Uh-huh, yes. There's no food from it, yes. Huh?
Like when they have like little tea parties.
Yeah. Yes. Or they make soup, which is actually mud. This material energy is created, therefore, for anyone who pretends to enjoy. An example can be cited here that there is no necessity for the government's creation of a separate police department. But because it is a fact that some of the citizens will not accept the state laws, a department to deal with criminals is necessary. There's no necessity, but at the same time, there is a necessity. Prabhupada says, there's no necessity, but at the same time, there is a necessity. Similarly, there was no necessity to create this material world for the sufferings of the conditioned souls. But at the same time, there are certain living entities known as Nitya-baddha who are eternally conditioned. We say that they have been conditioned from time immemorial because no one can trace out when the living entity, the part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, became rebellious against the supremacy of the Lord. It is a fact that there are two classes of men, those who are obedient to the laws of the Supreme Lord and those who are atheists or agnostics, who do not accept the existence of God and who want to create their own laws. It's interesting that Prabhupada includes agnostics here. Generally, in English language, we understand agnostic is one who says, I don't know, is there God or is there not God? Or some will go a step further and they will say, it is not possible to know whether there is a God or not. Of course, the word comes from gnosis, the Greek word gnosis. And where does gnosis come from? Anyone know? Huh? Jnana, yes. It's a cognate of jnana. Anyway, it's interesting that Prabhupada includes, he puts atheists and agnostics together. They do not accept the existence of God and want to create their own laws. They want to establish that everyone can create his own laws or his own religious path. This might remind us of this sort of trendy philosophical trend it developed especially, I think, in the 1960s in France, called existentialism. Jean-Paul Sartre, in particular, became very prominent in that. And one of the ideas of his, he wrote a lot, but one of his, I guess you can say, popular ideas is that existence precedes essence. The fact that we exist comes before any consideration of why, any meaning. And what could the meaning be? They want to say it is absurd. There is no meaning. But we are, he says further, essentially needing beings. We need to have meaning. And so what to do in a universe which is meaningless? He says, make your own meaning. Create your own meaning. But it strikes me that the notion that the universe is absurd implies a sense of reason. In other words, to even have the idea that something is unreasonable or without reason or meaningless, it presupposes it. To even have that idea, you must have some idea of reason, isn't it? So if that's the case, then where does that come from? That's also part of the universe. Anyway, he says, they want to establish that everyone can create his own laws or his own religious path. This might remind us also of the popular phrase, spiritual but not religious. Have you met people who say that? I'm spiritual but not religious. They even have it as an official category now. SBNR, spiritual but not religious. So they make this kind of dichotomy between spirituality and religion. That's another topic, but it kind of goes into what Prabhupada is saying here, that people create their own religion. They have this sense, they might not want to call it religion, they may want to call it spirituality. Sort of, in Sweden they have the word smörgåsbord. You have in English smorgasbord. Smörgåsbord, they say in Swedish. It means, you pick and choose what you want, which is very much driven now by the internet in particular. Without tracing out the beginning of the existence of these two classes, which two classes? Those who are obedient to the laws of the Supreme Lord and those who are atheists or agnostics. Without tracing out the beginning of the existence of these two classes, we can take it for granted that some of the living entities revolted against the laws of the Lord. Such entities are called conditioned souls. For they are conditioned by the three modes of material nature. Therefore, the words gunair vichitraha are used here. In this material world, there are 8,400,000 species of life. As spirit souls, they're all transcendental to this material world. Why, then, do they exhibit themselves in different stages of life? The answer is given here. They are under the spell of the three modes of material nature. Because they were created by the material energy, their bodies are made of the material elements. Covered by the material body, the spiritual identity is lost. And therefore the word mumuhe is used here, indicating they have forgotten their own spiritual identity. This forgetfulness of spiritual identity is present in the jivas, or souls, who are conditioned, being subject to be covered by the energy of material nature. Jnana guhaya is another word used. Guha means covering. Can also mean cave. Because the knowledge of the minute conditioned souls is covered, they are exhibited in so many species of life. It is said in Srimad Bhāgavatam, 7th chapter, 1st canto, the living entities are illusioned by the material energy. In the Vedas also it is stated that the eternal living entities are covered by different modes, and that they are called tricolored, red, white, and blue living entities. Whoops. Prabhupada actually is paraphrasing here what is in some of the commentaries. At least Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes a verse from Veda. Typically in the commentaries they will just say, iti shrute, it's in the Veda. They don't tell you where. You're supposed to know where it is. Okay, three tricolored, red, white, and blue living entities. Red is the representation of the mode of passion. White is the representation of the mode of goodness, and blue is the representation of the mode of ignorance. Oh, I remember now. It's mentioned, it's in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, in case anyone asks you. These modes of material nature belong to the material energy, and therefore the living entities under these different modes of material nature have different kinds of material bodies. Because they are forgetful of their spiritual identities, they think the material bodies to be themselves. To the conditioned soul, me means the material body. This is called moha, or bewilderment. It is repeatedly said in the Katha Upanishad that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is never affected by the influence of material nature. It is rather the conditioned souls, or the minute infinitesimal parts and parcels of the Supreme, who are affected by the influence of material nature and who appear in different bodies under the material modes. And so ends Srila Prabhupada's purport to this verse. Gunair vichitra srijatim sarupa prakritim praja vilokya mumuhe sadya saiha jnana guhaya. Now, let's back up. Yesterday you heard, no doubt, a brilliant lecture by Swami Bhagavan Keshava Swami Maharaj on the previous verse, yes. So let's get a bit of context. Saesha prakritim sukshmang daiving gunamaying vibhu yadritchayai vopagatam abhyapadyatalilaya. As his pastime, that Supreme Personality of Godhead the greatest of the great, accepted the subtle material energy, which is invested with three material modes of nature and which is related with Vishnu. And as Prabhupada points out in the purport we've read from verse 5, Leelaya is significant. We all know the word Leela, and we generally think of it in terms of the Lord's play. And so it may seem strange to us that this may also have something to do with creation of this world, which we understand to be not a particularly fun place. Rather, it's being compared to a prison, and the control of this place is identified with the department of the police, right? And yet, that is what is being said. And in the commentaries, in the beginning to verse 5, they tie it into verse 4. And this is very typical of commentary, to show the continuity from one verse to the next. So in verse 4, we have this reference to the Lord's pastime, that he accepts subtle material energy, which is constituted of three modes of nature. And then what happens? Well, then the living entities come under the control of that material energy. So that means that's also, somehow or other, that's also the Lord's pastime. Prabhupada would translate the word lila usually as pastime. When we think of, what do we think of? Well, we're all devotees trying to be devotees, so when we hear the word pastime, we think of Krishna's pastimes. But do you have any other association with that word, pastime? Any mental association you have? You've all been indoctrinated too much into, and it's hard to separate from that. Well, what's the word pastime? What is it? Pass time. It's for passing time, right? It's a thing to do just to while away the time, right? When you have nothing else to do, you hang out, maybe you play some game, what are you doing? I'm passing the time. What's your pastime? Perhaps wasting time, we think of also. Right? But it's interesting, if we think about it, where is time functional? In Sanskrit, the word kala is one of the words for time. And there is an implication with the word kala. And what is that? It's that which destroys. It is that which makes everything deteriorate. It is that which affects all of material energy. So if this is the pastime of the Lord, it makes sense. He is entering in this world as his pastime, but first he's creating this world, and this world, how is it functioning? Through time. What does Krishna say in the Gita when Arjuna is so utterly astonished and bewildered and shocked when he sees the universal form? Yes, time I am, destroyer of the worlds. Kalosmi loka kshaya krit pravidho lokam samahartomiha pravidha. Time I am, kalosmi loka kshaya krit, I'm here to destroy. And that form the Lord was showing, was the form, was a universal form of destruction. How is it described? His mouths are consuming everything, right? In contrast to the form which he showed to Duryodhana prior to this. There he shows a form, a universal form, which is, you know about this. He's manifesting, he's creating out of his body. Which didn't impress Duryodhana one bit. He said, you're just doing some magic. And so he would not yield to his desire to stop the war. Kalosmi, so pastime, lilaya, this is what the Lord does in relation to time. He creates this world. And he creates this world so that there is great variety. Vichitra, the praja, the living beings, are vichitra. So a little hint on the Sanskrit. Can we scroll back to the Sanskrit of verse 5? Huh? It's there somewhere. Thanks to Raymond Desai. There we go. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so Gunar Vichitra Srijitim Sarupa Prakritim Praja. So a little point on Sanskrit, reading Sanskrit grammar. You can see praja is going to be the subject of this verse. And praja, what praja? Well, if you look at the end of it, it's long A, and then this, what's called visarga. And where else do we see this in the verse? Long A, visarga. Vichitraha and sarupaha. So these three words, these two, Vichitra and Sarupa, are describing praja. So, which praja? The variegated praja. And what else about them? Sarupa, they have forms, they have bodies. That's it. Okay. Another interesting word while we're at it is mumuhe. Mumuhe. This is a verb from the verbal root muh. Muh. M-U-H. And it looks like what would be called a desiderative, desiring to be bewildered. But no, it's not. I looked it up. And it's not that. It's just it's expressing illusion, being illusion or illusion. So dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir na muhyanti. They are not bewildered. So that muh, that's the same verb. They're bewildered here. All right, a bit about this bewilderment as explained in the first canto, famous verses, which Srila Jiva Goswami puts a lot of emphasis on. It's the story, you all know the story, it's the story of Vyasadeva becoming prepared to write the Srimad Bhāgavatam, to compose the Bhāgavatam. We all know he was unhappy, he was dissatisfied, he Narada, as usual, arrives just at the right time to address his problem. Sometimes I wish Narada Muni would just show up when the troubles are coming, but maybe he is. Prabhupada would say, you didn't see Narada? So maybe he's there and I'm too dull. But he affirms what Vyasa had already suspected about himself, right? Have you ever felt yourself a sense of, something's not right, I need to do something, and then you go to a senior devotee and you bring it up and discuss, and they affirm what your suspicion was. So this is one of Narada's functions. This is one of the functions of the Vaishnavas, senior devotees in particular, Guru in particular. So he affirms, and then he says, so get to it. Get to compose that which is focused on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which becomes the Bhāgavatam, and which Srila Prabhupada describes as the beautiful story of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If someone asks you, what is this book? You're distributing books, you have a Bhāgavatam. What is this? It's the beautiful story of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What? Yes. So what does Vyasa do after Narada gives him this advice? What does he do? Goes for a jog? Plays a game of chess? Passes the time? No, he sits down, right? And he meditates. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranihite amale. Apasya, and he meditates manasi in his mind. And then samyak pranihite amale, he comprehends completely samyak. Apasyat, and he sees. What does he see? Well, before he sees Maya, what does he see? Purusham Purnam. Apasyat Purusham Purnam Mayam Cha Tat Apasrayam. He sees the Lord, and he sees Maya having taken shelter, or in the shelter, Apa Ashrayam, of the Lord, Purusha. Okay, now it gets interesting, and I mention this because I think it could be argued that Srila Prabhupada is referring to this in the last part of his purport. Yaya samohito jiva atmanam tri gunatmakam paropi manute anartam tatkritam cha avipadyate. Now this is interesting. In the first verse he's referred to Maya. Maya is terminology which is very much in Vedanta talk. In Vedantic language, one speaks of Maya. In Sankhya, we don't hear about Maya. What do we hear? We hear about gunas. But what do we get in this second, verse 5 of chapter 7 of first canto? Yaya sammohito, sammohita, again, mohita is from that same verbal root, muh. And sammohito, totally bewildered, right? Sammohito jiva atmanam trigunatmakam. Trigunatmaka, the self becomes infused, you can say, with trigunas. So it goes from Maya terminology to Guna terminology. It goes from Vedanta to Sankhya. And this is something which is going on very much in Kapila Dev's instructions to Devahuti, is that, yes, it's all about Sankhya, to understand this material world, but to really understand, there is the Lord, there is the Absolute. In Sankhya, there are two principles. There's Purusha and there's Prakriti. In Vedanta, there is one principle. It's called Brahman. And of course, Vedanti tat tattva vidas, Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti. But it's Advaya Jnana, it's non-dual. So Vedanta is all about there being one principle, one ultimate ontological entity. And the Vedanta game is to understand how this multiplicity relates to the one. So this is being explained in this part of the Bhāgavatam through Sankhya by Kapila Dev. Right. Now, for a little bit of fun, that was the philosophy part. Now comes the fun part with the help of Kavi Karnapura in his Chaitanya Chandrodaya Nataka, a little passage which relates to what we've just discussed. Would you like to hear? So this is Chaitanya Chandrodaya Nataka is a Nataka. A Nataka is a 10-act drama, Sanskrit drama. And it's the first of, I think, 10 different types of dramas. And this, of course, it's Chaitanya Chandrodaya. It's about the arising of the moon, who is Chaitanya. And it's a wonderful, very poetic work in Sanskrit. And this is from Act 7, or of this 10-act drama. And it's describing something which the first part is not found in Chaitanya Charitamrita. The second little bit we'll read, or it leads into a short passage which you will recognize, but you'll find that it's a little different from what we find in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Or we may want to say it doesn't tell the whole story according to Krishna does. Okay, within Act 7, there's a king, and he says, is the king of Karnataka well and happy? And one character named Malabhatta says, because he has friends like your good self. I believe the first king is Prataparudra. Therefore, he is always in an auspicious condition of life. However, now one very auspicious thing has happened to him. King asks, what is that? Malabhatta says, O great king, on the pretext of going on pilgrimage, a certain regal sannyasi, his complexion the color of molten gold, came from this country to the south. His presence in the south filled the king of Karnataka with bliss. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya says to Malabhatta, go on speaking, go on speaking. And the king Prataparudra says, what is it? And Malabhatta says, as in the north, in the south, there are many karmis, many jnanis, a few Vaishnavas, very many Shaivites, and many blasphemers. The leaders of these different groups engage in bitter debate, each attempting to establish the supremacy of his own view. This situation made our king very anxious. And Prataparudra says, then? And Malabhatta, now he gives a longer description. He says, when this regal sannyasi entered the south, young and old all became struck with wonder when the Brahmins, eager to see him, approached and saw the splendor of his transcendental form. Without any prompting, they thought to themselves, when will I become like that? At that time, they became overwhelmed with ecstatic love. The hairs of their bodies stood erect, and tears flowed from their eyes. They all gave up the various theories they had previously accepted, and they became followers of this sannyasi. When our king heard of this, he became overwhelmed with bliss. To learn the specific details of this sannyasi's activities, the king disguised himself as an ordinary citizen and approached the Brahmins. And this may remind us of what Prataparudra does in order to approach Lord Chaitanya. When he heard from their mouths of this sannyasi's wonderful activities traveling to and from Setubandha, the king became overwhelmed, and he completely forgot that he was staying in the forest fire of repeated birth and death. And then Prataparudra says, "Minister, your king is fortunate." And Sarvabhauma says, What did he hear? Tell us. And Prataparudra says, "Oh, minister, please, tell us." And Malabhatta says, one day, absorbed in transcendental bliss, his garments wet with tears and his hairs of his body standing up as kadamba flowers in bloom, overcome with bliss, in a choked voice, he chanted the Lord's holy name as he walked on the road. Seeing him, some atheists said to themselves, "This is a Vaishnava. He will accept alms from us if we tell him that this is Bhagavat Prasadam." The atheist then took some impure food fit only for dogs and placed it before the sannyasi, saying, "O Swami, please accept this Bhagavat Prasadam." Even though he knew all that had happened when he heard the words Bhagavat Prasadam, he could not reject it. But instead, he took the plate of food in his hand. At that moment, a great bird swooped down, took the plate from his hand, and with the plate in its beak, flew away. And Sarvabhauma says, this is the greatness of the illusory potency. Even the great demigods controlling the universe are bewildered by the illusory potency of Maya. Certainly Maya can easily bewilder the tiny creatures of this world. Kavi Karnapura ki jai. So I think that's a nice point for us to remember from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and of course Kapila Dev is also describing for us how it comes about and how this situation is one arranged by the Lord to accommodate us in our rebelliousness. And that is his Leela. That is his pastime in this world of time. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki. Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna. I don't know if there is time for discussion. I apologize for going on so long. Yes, Divyambara.
So I understand the more we cover, the more we waste time. I understand that the more one is covered, the more one wastes time. So in our efforts as devotees, we try not to waste time. But then we may overwork or trying to do service, and then overwork and see resting or recreation as a waste of time, or sleeping as a waste of time. So how do we balance this? Because I don't want to waste time, but I don't...
It's a balancing question.
Yes.
Yes, Krishna reminds us in the Gita that balance is a good thing. Yukta haraviharasya, yukta cheshtasya karmasu, yukta svapna vabodasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. One can, by practice of yoga, become free from dukkha, from misery, from suffering, if and when one is yukta. And the word yukta is just a grammatical adjustment of the word yoga. One who does yoga is yukta, is engaged. So yukta ahara, one who is engaged, but it can also mean appropriately engaged or balanced. You used the word balance. So yukta ahara, one who is balanced in ahara. And ahara can mean eating, but it can also just mean all kinds of consumption, all kinds of taking something in. And that can be both physical and subtle. What are we taking into our awareness? Yukta ahara, vihara. Vihara can be translated as recreation. And it can mean also rest. So not taking in, relax. Vihara, V has the sense of out and away, and yeah. So yukta hara viharasya yukta cheshtasya karmasu, balance in one's efforts, cheshta. Yukta svapna, avabodha, and being balanced in one's sleeping and in one's being awake. So how to balance? To balance, I think here is where we can invoke, dare I invoke, common sense. Common sense. Being busy can be good, but being busy just to be busy may not be good, isn't it? We hear of workaholics, right? People who are actually afraid not to be doing something because they feel threatened. What is the point of my life? They start feeling existential angst, right? So balance has to be there. But of course, the living entity, the soul, is always active, and so there's really a change of activity when we may be, busy in a productive way, making, doing, organizing, cooking, but then we need to turn our energy into another direction. And related to this, I was thinking about this, and I believe it's there in commentary from acharyas, that the three modes of nature, of course, we want to move up from Tama, Raja to Sattva guna. But all of the gunas can be used in service. So, how do we use tamaguna in service? Well, we go to bed at night. We sleep, we rest, but we do it as a service. And Raja, well, we undertake projects, we do things, we go out, we engage in so many activities. Activity is the sort of basic feature of Rajaguna. And of course, Sattva guna especially we use in Krishna's service, all aiming toward Shuddha Sattva, of course. But yes, how to balance? How indeed? At some point, a little voice in your mind may say, okay, now it's time to slow down. Now it's time to take a break, isn't it? But sometimes not. Sometimes it's good to take a longer break in the form of going to a devotee festival, right? But then you go to the festival and you find yourself totally exhausted. I'm always finding that what we call a retreat is hardly a retreat. I have to, after the retreat, I always have to recover from the retreat. I always have to retreat from the retreat. But still, they're also, a source of inspiration to be with devotees, hearing, chanting. Prabhupada also speaks of, there's lazy intelligence as opposed to busy intelligence, and busy foolish and lazy foolish. And he says lazy intelligent is the best. But what is that intelligent side of lazy? The lazy intelligent person is one who can think how to get everything done that needs to be done, but without, breaking their head, arms, legs, and everything else, and having ulcers. So thinking about how to get somebody else to do that. Which, of course, we talk of preaching, and much of what we mean by preaching is inspiring, attracting others to engage in service, attracting people to say, yes, I could do that too. Let me take part in this. Let me help. I don't know. Any other ideas? How do we balance ourselves? Ram Rai Prabhu.
There's an antidote of His Grace Guru Kripa Prabhu. You can hear it on the Prabhupada Memories. Prabhupada had his servant, I don't know who it was, wake Guru Kripa up in the middle of the night. And he comes before Srila Prabhupada just waking up and said, "Why are you sleeping?" He says, "Prabhupada, it's 12 o'clock, I am not sleeping, I'm up, I am translating. Prabhupada, I'm a conditioned, he said, we've just been working 18 hours nonstop." And Prabhupada looked at him and said, "Our process," he said, 18 hours? "Our process is 24 hours. And then Guru Kripa Prabhu goes on to say how Prabhupada was chastising him. You're just you're a conditioned soul. You have to become but Prabhupada, you're a Paramahamsa. you become Paramahamsa too. And then it got to the point where Guru Kripa, he was like getting agitated, and Prabhupada just kind of said, all right, that's all right, take rest. So I think to the degree that one has missionary spirit, just like Srila Prabhupada had such urgency to do as much as possible in the little time that he had, and anything that Prabhupada demonstrated in his, that's for us as his followers to emulate as best we can, of course taking into account our individual quote-unquote psychophysical natures, but Prabhupada is urging us to overcome the ordinary and come to an extraordinary platform.
To stretch the envelope.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
It's like Prabhupada's coming here to New York City. We just celebrated the 57th anniversary of the first Kirtan at Tompkins Square Park. We all went there on Monday. It was very ecstatic, a lot of potency, a lot of mercy. And Satsvarup Maharaj in Leela Amrita, he gives a very long description of the event. He was there. And at the end it says, if it was risky for a 71-year-old man to thump a drum and shout so loud for over 2 hours, he would take that risk for Krishna. He had survived the non-Krishna Yoga Society, waited all winter in obscurity, and now that he had bhakti, pure bhakti flowing like the Ganges to the sea, it was too good to stop, you know. Nothing had come from throwing Emerson's pouring over the Gita and the Puranas. No Hare Krishna had come from Vivekananda's speech at World Religions at Chicago Parliament, 1893. And yeah, just Prabhupada's infinite mercy coming from Lord Chaitanya to save the fallen conditioned souls. So that's what Prabhupada is offering us. He's expecting us to do that also. And just some thoughts. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Nice thoughts. Valuable. So stretch the envelope for the mission and keep yourself balanced, keep yourself healthy. There was a time I was in the Amsterdam temple. This would have been 1973 or early 74, and I kind of decided I need to reduce my eating. I should minimize eating. So I was doing my best at that until one day my nose started bleeding, apparently because I wasn't eating enough. And it came to the attention of the temple president, Tulsi Das. You remember Tulsi? He was, yeah. He said, all right, that's it for you. Now, for the next 2 weeks, you are going to eat 10 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day. And I was out distributing books. I had to take a bag, with 5 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with me. And the rest were, so, yeah. Yes.
When I was a new devotee, was very much into austerity and not eating. So I was chosen to play Hiranyakashipu performing his austerities, standing on his tiptoes. And the great Lokamangala was the full-fledged Hiranyakashipu, the Vaikuntha players, a play in 55th Street, 1980. And after the play, Jai Advaita Maharaj forced me to eat a gigantic plate of halva. He said, "You're too skinny."
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, so I don't know, I find it's an ongoing challenge to get the balance. I remembered Tribhuvana Prabhu. He was, a glorious preacher who had no concept of balance. For him it was all or nothing. And, it was glorious. But I can't help but thinking if he had taken a bit more care of himself, he might still be with us. But who knows? Yeah. Grantaraj Srimad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Govinda Deva ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Harinam Sankirtana ki jai, Gaura Premanande Hari.